Hi, everyone, and welcome to Awareness Wednesday. I'm Taylor Bunn, Executive Director of Hope for All, and I am very excited to have Kayce Anderson, who is the Executive Director at For the Good, with us here today to tell us about her organization and some ways that we can all help. So, Kayce, welcome. Tell us about For the Good.
Thank you. We focus on girls' education in Kenya. We are currently working in a region down near the Tanzania border with the Maasai tribe, which is quite likely the tribe that you think about when you think of Kenya. They wear the red shawls and have the jewelry, the ornately braided beaded jewelry, and they are a beautiful community. It is rather patriarchal, and oftentimes girls don't go to school at the same rate that boys go to school. And now that we are in these times of COVID, it's particularly critical that we support girls and their educations so that they are seen during these times as still learning, because when they become viewed as just sitting at home, they become much more vulnerable to early marriage. So right now we're working on a program. We've it's been a big haul, but we're working on getting tablets out to both girls and boys. The Kenyan government has really stepped up their online learning during COVID. So the vast majority of the country actually does have access to continued learning, which has been awesome. The government and then a few organizations have put out some really quality material. But unfortunately, the communities we work in don't have access to internet nor smart devices like tablets or iPhones or things like that. So we've been fortunate, and the schools have been supportive enough. They were given some tablets by the Kenyan government back in 2016, and they have allowed us to use those tablets, upon which we've put an offline platform that we can load a ton of learning material. So learning material that has been posted by the Kenyan government that's specific to their curriculum, and then some additional material that's really cool from like Khan Academy and some other websites and sources that really make the material much more interesting. And it's actually been super cool because we're able to give them some resources now that they didn't have even when they were in class, like access to videos so they can see what it looks like through a microscope, or see bees pollinating a flower or something like that, things that they probably wouldn't see in their classroom, with the dirt floors and chalkboard, which is kind of the what the learning tools are there. So in a nutshell, that's where we are at this moment. That's, as an organization, we focus on girls' education, but in this moment, we're really trying to work with the communities to find ways to allow them to keep learning under this situation.
And so you're working with schools that are already there. Y'all don't build schools, you're using the schools that exist and are just working with getting the girls attending?
That's a really good question. So there's a couple of layers to that. One of the primary reasons girls and boys don't go to school is just because the schools are lacking, especially secondary schools. So we as an organization don't build schools, but we work with the primary schools and the local governments to start schools. The easiest way to do that is to actually piggyback a secondary school on a primary school. So oftentimes there will be an extra space in a primary school, either an extra classroom or an office space or a kitchen or whatever, even under a tree. There's been a number of schools that just start under a tree. The first year is the most difficult because they have to prove that they have a school, which means they have to have a teacher and some students, a latrine. And then after that, the Kenyan government actually kicks in funding. So once they can show that they have this school running, then they get support. So the first year's tough because the teachers have to take reduced pay, and often the students have to pay more because they're not getting that subsidy from the government. So we don't as an organization build schools, but that's actually one of our primary foci in getting girls in school. That's a big piece of it, is just making schools more available.
And so is the availability of schools the primary barrier, or the cost of the girls attending? I guess I have two questions about barriers. So what are the barriers for the girls attending? And then what are the barriers to you for doing your work in Kenya?
That's a really good question. The barriers, there's a couple of barriers. The access, just the simple lack of access to schools is probably the most significant in this area. We created a model with a lot of factors, looking at poverty and health and access to schools and funding for schools and teachers, teachers per pupil and all of those things. And the number one factor in determining whether girls would transition from primary to secondary school is access to school. Mm-hmm. So that's not that surprising. You can't go to school if there's not a school nearby. The big thing, I think, where it does get tricky is there are boarding schools. So the students that have access, that have families with resources, go to boarding schools. So there are students within the community that go to school, but for the vast majority of the students that are living in low resource families, they can't go to those secondary boarding schools. The cost of boarding schools is really expensive. And it's kind of a double whammy for girls because if a family's gonna make a big investment in their children's education, it's more likely to be in the boys. They're just seen as the income inners. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And that leads to the second piece, which is just the cultural element. And girls, both girls and boys are valued, and they are seen as valuable. A girl's value is often inherently in her marriageability. That's changing. That's definitely changing in Kenya and in the Maasai culture. But they still kind of have, a foot in each pot right now. Like they still hold on to that to some element. And even within a family, you'll find quite likely within a family, you'll find some daughters, a few daughters that are in school, and most of the boys are often in school. And then some of the other daughters are married off. So that's the other piece that we're working with the communities to evolve.
Mm-hmm. How do you identify the villages that you work with?
Currently, we're in, it's kind of, we're up on like a mesa. We're in this region on this escarpment. So you have to go up, you go through a big, huge valley and then up this escarpment. It's right on the border of Tanzania. And it's, so it's pretty easy right now because there's kind of this, very clear geographic area. But maybe what your true question is how did we even end up there? Why are we working with that community? And that was really looking, so first we started out with, why aren't girls in school? And the factor that came out of that was lack of access. So then we kind of looked at a map, and there were a couple of variables that were actually compelling in this area. Narok County in general, which is the region that we work in, has the highest teen pregnancy rate at about 40%. And the relationship between teen pregnancy and education is very high. If you can keep a girl in school, the likelihood of her getting pregnant as a teen goes way down. So we felt like we could have impact there. The access to schools was very low, and we feel like we have a very viable way to work with communities to increase their schools. This a method of piggybacking secondary schools on primary schools. It's very low cost, and it's a way that they do it. We didn't invent it ourselves. It's a way that they do it in other parts of the country, but for whatever reasons, they weren't employing those methods in this area. So we just kind of brought that there and started talking to the leadership, getting them on board. So it was really kind of a combination of those two factors. We also had some connections in that area, which is also always really important if you can have a foot into communities. Just coming in as an organization from the outside. We're a Kenyan organization, but it's, if you don't have that tribal connection or a local connection, it's really difficult to make ends in new places. So we had some pretty valuable relationships in that area that also allowed us to come in and have, an element of trust kind of from the beginning, and we were able to connect with some of the leadership that we probably would have taken a while otherwise. So that's how we ended up specifically, both a feeling that we could offer something that would create impact in this area, who we are as an organization. We had something to offer this area in particular in terms of our experience, and we had some connections there that made the pathway a little bit more open.
So what's a typical school day like for a child who is in this region of Kenya? Like how far is the school from where they live? How are they getting there? What is that? I'm sure it's so different from what we have here.
There's actually a super cute video on our website that shows, I had a GoPro and I put it on a little girl as she was walking to school. And of course, it's not the entire walk to school because that was probably about 45 minutes. But you can see kind of the terrain, her walking through the cattle and up to the school and everything. It's really cute. But a normal day, they wake up pretty early, depending on how far they live from the school. Many of them walk more than an hour each way, and that's particularly difficult for the younger kids, which is also a problem. They often start the kids at an older age just so they can make the walk. We're also working in an area that has a lot of wildlife. The Masai Mara, which is like where you go to view the wildlife, is right next door. So there's lions and hyenas and that sort of thing. So there's some trepidation, from the parents, rightfully so. So normal day, they probably wake up. They're supposed to be at school at 7-ish to start cleaning the school for the day. So the students do all the janitorial work. They clean the latrines, they do the sweeping, that sort of thing. So they clean the school every day. They have a study period, and then the school day generally goes to about 4 o'clock. And then if they need extra work, they will stay later. It's a long day for them. And then they're often also doing additional family chores like gathering firewood and fetching water and that sort of thing. Because these households don't have running water or electricity or anything like that.
So you've been operational at For the Good since 2015. What do you think have been your biggest successes in your work there?
Um, Honestly, okay, there's a couple. Just this last January, we were able to, we've in two different areas. The first area we were working in is a county called Throckmorton. And at that point in the organization, we were focused primarily on sanitary pads. And because that was one of the greater barriers in that region. And we distributed a lot of sanitary pads to girls, thousands of sanitary pads. And also with that provided health education that a lot of those communities wouldn't get otherwise. About a year and a half ago, we grew into this region that I was just talking about, which is on the Tanzania border. And it's kind of another level of, I hate to use the word need, but there's some barriers there that are, I would say, at a scale greater. So Throckmorton, pads, and that's pretty easy to address in some health issues. But there was a real, I would say the culture was already in place. They really valued education. So there wasn't, it wasn't too much of a push. They just, it was some things that allowed the girls to go to school more frequently. This area, only about 10% of the girls make it to secondary school. So we were starting in a place where historically they valued education much differently. The history of this area was much different than the region we were working in before. So it's been a slower road, but within a year, we were able to, with the community, open another secondary school. That was in January. Unfortunately, it had to close in March for COVID. But the other thing that was really exciting, so then we were working on opening an additional 3 secondary schools. And then there was another primary school that had seen the first primary school open a secondary school, and on their own had begun the process of starting a secondary school. And I feel like that is when that happened much more quickly than I anticipated, that it would grow organically like that. That's kind of the goal. That's what you want, but you expect that it will take a bit of pushing and a bit of help to get there, some investment. And we had been there a year and we were already beginning to see that. It's frustrating that COVID happened. So now, who knows what will happen. I think it will happen, but we'll have to kind of start over again in building that momentum. But it was super cool to see that change happen organically, and the primary schools start thinking about how they could start a secondary school on their grounds. There's 26 primary schools in the region. There's 1 boarding school and 1 day school. So of an area that is 650 square miles. It's a big area. So
wow.
Yeah, so if we could get secondary schools, associated with each current primary school, then virtually every child would have the opportunity to continue on beyond 8th grade, which would make an incredible impact in the lives of the girls and boys and all students. Yeah.
It completely changes their future.
Totally. I mean, from the number of children they have to, their income to just their worldview, coming out of 8th grade, and what happens when 8th grade is the ending point, you get dropouts in 7th and 6th, when they see that they don't have much of a future beyond 8th grade, then it's harder to go on, to push through to 8th grade. And there's a high incidence of pregnancies and early marriages at that time, because the families see the same thing. When there's, when there's a dead end there, then they start looking for other options. So
how can we help you? Y'all are a nonprofit. COVID has had just a drastic impact on your work and so much other work, but I know you've got a special giving opportunity coming up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking. So right now we're working with a platform called Global Giving, and tomorrow, so between June 8th and I believe it's June 26th, we have to raise $5,000. And if we do that, then we become a partner, which has a lot of other incentives, such as corporate sponsors and that sort of thing. Tomorrow,
today, we're
June 17th. Oh, today, June 17th. Thank you. There's a matching piece. So it's not a full one-to-one, but it's significant. So if you could donate today, then that would be even better, that much better, because we would get a portion of matching from Global Giving.
And so does the match that y'all make apply to the $5,000 you need to earn?
Yep. Yeah,
awesome.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it will get us that much closer. And we run a super tight ship. So almost all of that money is going towards our program work in Kenya.
Great. And so give today, or throughout this campaign.
Thank you.
To help for the good meet this $5,000 goal. And then you have a donate button on your website, and people.
We do. So outside of this
traditional
period,
ways as well.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll take it in any form through this Global Giving campaign. It's through their website. So we'll put up the link for that. But any other time, or even during this time, if you want to go check out our website, we've spent a lot of time on it, and you can give that way as well.
Great. So we've got the website, and then also your Twitter, Facebook, Instagram handles on the screen. So like, share, follow, and then Kayce, Hope for All is donating $1,000 to your campaign today.
Oh my gosh.
We love your work. We're very proud of everything you're doing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Please expect me to invite myself on a trip to Africa as soon as you're able to travel again.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. It's awesome. you won't want to leave.
Thank you. I probably won't.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And
thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Of course.
Thank you so much for the
You're
donation.
welcome.
That's huge.
You're very welcome. And we look forward to seeing everything y'all do. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. If there's an organization or a person you think we should highlight on Awareness Wednesday, let me know. Shoot me an email, hit us up on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye.
Bye.